I used to think love meant loyalty. Absolute, no questions asked. Die on this hill kind of loyalty. The kind you see in war movies or wedding vows. Forsaking all others. That line stuck with me more than any other. So when my wife started spending too much time with her family, her sister, her mom, those endless weekend brunches and group texts, I told myself it was weakening us, splitting her loyalties. I was the one she married. I was the one who came first. At first I was subtle. I made jokes. Tell your mom she's stealing my wife. Or, don't you think your sister needs to grow up and solve her own problems? Just light little comments to plant a seed. I'd nudge her closer to me and further away from them. That's how I saw it. Not manipulation, just balance, realignment. But love doesn't feel like love when it's territorial. It starts to rot, quietly. I'd roll my eyes when her phone buzzed with family texts. I'd ask her to skip birthdays, to leave early from family dinners. I'd say things like, "I just want time with you, is that so wrong?" And of course she'd say no, so she'd cancel. And every time she did, I felt a little victory, a little closer, a little more hers. The scary part is, I didn't even see it happening. Not really. I thought I was protecting us, but I was just making her smaller. The first time she pushed back, really pushed back, was during her niece's graduation. She told me we were going for the whole weekend, Friday to Sunday. It was in another city. Her whole family was flying in. But I had other plans. A weekend I'd booked for just the two of us. Something romantic. Something to prove I cared. I asked her to cancel the trip, told her niece wouldn't even notice. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just looked at me and said, "Why do you always make me choose?" That line, it stuck in my brain like a splinter, because it wasn't the first time she'd said it. I just hadn't heard it before. You don't realize how much damage you're doing when you're reconvinced you're the victim. I always told myself I was the one being left out. I framed everything like she was drifting away, that I was the one trying to hold the marriage together. But I wasn't holding anything. I was squeezing it until there was no air left. After that weekend, something in her changed. She stopped inviting me to things. She stopped telling me what her family said about us. I'd walk into the room and she'd put her phone down. Her voice got quieter, her eyes duller. It is strange how silence can feel like screaming when it comes from someone who used to be your whole world. One night, we were eating dinner in the kitchen, not talking, just chewing. I looked at her and said, "Are you happy?" I didn't expect her to say yes. But I also didn't expect her to say, "I feel like a ghost in my own life." That's when it hit me. Not just that she was unhappy, and I'd known that, but that she didn't even recognize herself anymore. I'd stripped away the parts of her that made her whole, her family, her laughter, her independence. I told myself it was love, but it was just possession. When you control someone long enough, they stop resisting, not because they agree, but because they're tired. She didn't fight me anymore. She just went quiet. And then, one morning, she didn't come back from her sister's house. There was no big fight, no shouting, no broken glass. Just a note on the kitchen counter. Short, just a few lines. She said she loved me, but she needed to be able to breathe again. That she missed who she used to be. That she wasn't too sure if she could ever get that person back. But she was going to try. I stared at that note for hours. My first instinct was anger. How could she leave me like that, after everything? But under that rage was something worse. Understanding. She didn't leave me that morning. She'd been leaving for years. I just hadn't noticed. Or maybe I had, and I just kept tightening the leash. And now, I sit here in this apartment, alone. Her laughter used to bounce off these walls. Her toothbrush used to sit next to mine. The echo of her still haunts the space. I keep replaying every moment I made her choose. Every time I acted like love was a battlefield, and she was my territory to defend. I wanted to be her everything, but I made myself the only thing. And in the end, that wasn't love. That was fear, dressed up like devotion. She made her choice. And now, I live with mine. It's strange what you notice after someone leaves. Not just the obvious things, her toothbrush, her coffee mug, the dent in the couch cushion where she used to sit, but the things that slowly come into focus, like a photograph you've been staring at all your life without ever seeing. I started finding things I never paid attention to before. A grocery list in her handwriting, her sweater still hanging by the door, a voicemail from her mother I'd forgotten to delete. I played it once, then 5 more times. Just her mom's voice asking if we were coming to dinner that Sunday. Her voice was warm, full of hope. I remember the way I used to roll my eyes at those messages. Now I just sit in silence, listening to them, like they're the last relics of a life I ruined. You tell yourself at first that they'll come back, that it's just space, a reset. Maybe she needs to miss you, needs to remember the good parts. But that's just grief bargaining with guilt. Because deep down, I knew I'd pushed her too far. Not in one big dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small selfish ones. I tried to justify everything for a long time. I told myself I wasn't abusive. I didn't hit her. I didn't scream. I didn't cheat. I provided. I was present. But not doing bad things isn't the same as being good. Emotional erosion doesn't leave bruises, but it still breaks people. Sometimes I wonder how long she stayed out of hope and how long she stayed out of fear. Not fear of me, but fear of losing the person she used to be, of waking up one day and realizing she no longer recognized herself in the mirror. Just a woman who lived someone else's life, kept someone else's rules, followed someone else's map. She didn't leave to punish me. That's what still haunts me. She didn't want revenge or drama, she just wanted herself back. I started going to therapy after she left. At first, I told the therapist exactly what I thought I was supposed to say, that I loved her, that I was devastated, that I didn't understand why she left. But my therapist didn't ask me about her. He asked me about me. He asked when I first started thinking love meant control. He asked who made me believe that closeness and isolation were the same thing. He asked me what I was afraid of. And the truth is, I was afraid of not being enough. That was the core of it all. Every possessive comment, every passive-aggressive guilt trip, every time I tried to draw her closer by cutting off her roots, it all came from that one rotten seed. Fear. I didn't believe she'd stay if I didn't make it hard for her to leave. I confused love with ownership. I thought choosing me meant discarding everyone else. But real love isn't a competition. It doesn't demand you erase your past or betray the people who raised you just to prove loyalty. She never asked me to give up anything. I was the one asking, demanding, always needing reassurance I couldn't hold in my own hands. I turned our marriage into a constant test she could never pass. I've thought about reaching out. So many times I've drafted messages, I've stared at her number, I even drove past her sister's house once. I didn't go in. I just parked across the street and watched the light in the living room. For hours. I never sent the message. I never knocked on the door. Because it's not about getting her back anymore. It's about finally understanding why I lost her. There's a cruelty in clarity when it arrives too late. The hardest part? She probably still loves me. That's the part that cuts the deepest. Because she didn't leave out of hatred. She left to survive. I don't know where she is now, if she's happy, if she's finally breathing without guilt. But I hope she is. I hope she found a place where she doesn't have to choose between loving someone and loving herself. As for me, I sit with my choices. And every day, I choose to remember the sound of her laugh, the shape of her hand, the way her voice softened when she talked to her niece. Not to torture myself, but to remind myself what love is supposed to feel like. Free, full, whole. I made her choose, and she chose herself, and now all I can do is live with the man I made her run from.